Hello and welcome to my messy hair. Yes, I know I need a haircut. No, actually, welcome to Luke Someone Books and Studios. My name is Luke, of course, and we are going to be continuing on from yesterday. We're going to start actually building the website using the hash-based router approach. We're going to be using Ajax, which is basically communicating with the server, and then we're going to get some stuff working, basically. So I'll go straight into the video, I suppose. Okay, so in this video what I'm going to start doing is just doing some simple Ajax requests. Now, jQuery comes with its own Ajax request call. It's literally just $.ajax and that's it. I'm not going to be doing that. I actually prefer to use the XML HTTP request class. I mean, it really doesn't matter which you use. I mean, they're both compatible with all versions of web browsers as far as I am aware. So I don't suppose it really makes much difference, but I'm going to be using the XML HTTP request in these tutorials. So first thing I'm going to do is, if I show you here, I've got all of these pages here. So we've got an MD page, which is basically a Markdown page. I want to convert that into HTML, so I'll do that a bit later. And then I've got all of these different pages here with lots of different things going on. So in order to get this up and running, I'm not going to connect to a database initially, but I will in fact use a typical Ajax request. Now, the one thing I forgot to actually show you was the generated PHP code. So I mean, it's not really much at the moment, as you can imagine, because we've only got a main function which is being called into here, and obviously that's not really doing anything, as you can imagine. So let's just let's just go straight into actually putting this together. So if we go to our Haxe code inside of our client folder, so this is where I am, the client folder. I'm not going to use the shared folder for quite some time, at least until we actually do start sharing some code between the client and server. So the first thing I'm going to do, in order to actually get an Ajax request going, I'm going to say import js.jQuery. Now, it's not currently appearing, as you can see, and the reason why is because it's not part of the it's not part of the standard library anymore. We're actually using the lib. Now this should be picking it up, however, which is interesting. Now what I'm going to do here, so I'm importing jQuery. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in jq, and what that means is I want to change this jQuery reference into this. So when I refer to JQ, it is going to refer to this ultimately. Now, secondly, what I'd like to do is import js.html and then XML HTTP request. So this is what I'm going to use to actually grab a page. Now, I want to grab these HTML pages here, or HTML pages here, inside of the pages folder. And there's two ways in which we can do that. We can contact the server and ask the server to get those HTML pages later, which is probably what we will start doing in order to get database functionality working. Alternatively, we can just get the page ourselves directly, which is what we're going to do initially. So the way that we do that, so I'm going to create a function in here, and I'm going to call it static function get page. So I'm going to get a URL which is going to be of type string. So this is a function. This is the name of the function, and inside of this function I am going to put a parameter called URL, and that's going to be of type string. In here I'm going to create a local variable, and I'm going to call it XML. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to call it request. I'm then going to instantiate this. Now, that's a specific programming keyword, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. So when we want to create a new instance of this, basically. So new XML HTTP request, and we're going to use the parentheses. Now, let's imagine, for example, we have what's called a constructor. So a constructor looks something like this, a public function new. Okay, so inside of Haxe, this is what our constructor is. Now, when we say new XML HTTP request, in the underlying code, what's actually happening is we are calling this function here. And we are taking back, or bringing back, all of the public variables that we can access, or public functions that we can access within that context, with the exception of new. Now, so that's what's happening there. Now, as you may have remembered, I also mentioned that a static is code that can be shared between different classes. So although static functions might appear inside of, say, this context, for example, main, we cannot actually, this does not, if we had, say, this instance, for example, let's say we had a static function within this class, we wouldn't actually access it using static function. If we wouldn't have access to a static function within this, because we are accessing the member variables of this class. So member variables are things like public var and public function, right? Oops. And public function, right, like that, right? The way we would normally access a static variable or a static function is just by referring to the class directly, like this, and then we would go into it like that. Now, there are pros and cons to each. I'm not going to go through them because this is a tutorial about web development, but my point is in order for people who do not necessarily understand programming, those are the differences between static and public, now, or member variables. Now, I also mentioned we're going to instantiate an object. Now, instantiation is basically create a new instance of. So in programming, we have what's called objects, or in object-oriented programming, we have what's considered objects. Now, objects by themselves don't do anything. So we need to create objects, and the way we create those objects is by using this new keyword here. Once we've got this object that we want to use, then we can start using it. So request dot on ready state changed, or change actually, I think, or is it changed? I need to look this up now. XML HTTP request, right? So if we go to here, so we've got all of these different member variables, properties as it calls it, and we've got things like onReadyStateChange, ready state, response, response text. So these are all member variables of XML HTTP request. Right. So I'm going to use on ready state change. And this is a callback. What is a callback, you might ask? Well, I'm going to assign a function to it, and it does not take any parameters, I don't believe. So if we go and take a look at that, so this is what's called a callback. So this is the function that we want to be executed when the ready state changes, right? So it doesn't take any parameters, and we can check to see once we have opened up a URL, for example, using a particular method, we can check when we get that back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for the time being. I'm going to say request dot open. So the method is going to be get. Now there's different HTTP methods, or HTTP methods. So there's get, there's post. Those are the most used ones. In what's called REST APIs, you might also use something like put and delete as well, but we'll go on to that a bit later. So with request.open, I want to get whatever the URL that we are requesting. So I'm going to put URL here. Finally, I'm going to say request.send. So we're sending the request to the server. Now, technically, we're not actually sending anything to the server. What we're ultimately saying is we want to get this URL, and this URL I will show you in a minute. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to say if request.readyState. Now, there's two things that we need to check. So the ready state is 4. So basically, if we go back to here and we go back and we go to ready state, so we have 5 different values here. We've got 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 means opened, so that's when this open has been called. 2, headers received, that's when send has been called and the headers and status are available. 3 is when we're loading, so we're downloading something, and so that's what that is. Response text holds partial data, and 4 is done, so that's when the operation is complete. So we want to wait until the operation is complete. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got that there, ready state is equal to 4. Now we also want to check something else, and that is status. And we want to make sure that the status is 200. So if we go back to our trusty browser and we go to status, we can see different statuses. So this outputs the following. So it's similar, but not exactly the same. So the unsent is 0, opened is also 0, loading is 200, and done is 200. Now, there's a reason why we need to check both, because let's say, for example, the ready state is 4. Let's say the ready state is 3, for example, but so it's loading, but our status is going to be 200 on loading. So if we were to just check status and not ready state, well, it's not technically done. So we need to make sure to check both of them. So once we've done that, what I'd like to now do is get this content here. So this is the ID, this dev ID content, and I want to put inside of this content, the HTML content that we get from the URL. So what I'm going to do is say new JQ, and in jQuery there's a way in which we get this content element here. So this is an ID of content, so what I'm going to do is say hash, which is the ID, and then I'm going to put content here. In jQuery, what we can also do is we can call a function within jQuery called HTML. So we want to set the HTML content of this element that we've just retrieved, and I am going to use request.response text. So whatever the response text is, we want to set the HTML of content to that response text of what we get back. So in order to test that, what we need to do is say get page. So I'm just going to use a typical example, and I'm going to get, for example, news.htm. So this is what that looks like at the moment. So that's inside pages and then news.htm. So I'm going to say page, get page, pages/news.htm. Then I'm going to close that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go into my Haxe folder, PowerShell, and I'm going to say Haxe build.hxml. Okay, so that has built. These are just warnings, they're not actual compiler errors, so that's fine. So as you can see in here, for example, it thinks there's an error because the type's not found, it's not part of the standard library, but we have included jQuery extern, so it compiled successfully. So I wouldn't always go by what the compilation server is telling us, because there can sometimes be confusion between these two files here. So we've got build-server.hxml and we've also got build.hxml. So there may be a bit of confusion with the Haxe compilation server as to which one to use. And in fact, if we look down here, for example, it's got build-html. So instead, if we were to use this, it's now thinking it's fine. So we've got two different configurations that we can choose from. There's build.hxml in the context of the client, and then we've also got the server, which we can use in the context of build-hxml. Now that's obviously quite annoying, but I'm not sure of a way to configure that, but once I have found a way to configure it, in fact, should we start doing that? Let's start doing that in a minute. So let's just make sure that that works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, so let's go to index.htm, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in a script, and I am going to put here src. I'm going to go to scripts, main.js, and as you can see, if we go to our side screen, we have just retrieved that HTML file. Obviously we've got all this random template tags here that we will start parsing once we've connected to a database, but as you can see, we have implemented a very basic way of retrieving pages from the pages section of our project. Now obviously if we click on these, it's not doing anything at the moment because we haven't actually technically implemented the router. Now let's do something experimental with our Visual Studio Code and see if we can actually configure this. So project using Haxe configurations. It's not saying anything. Haxe.configurations. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see if there's something in settings that we can do. Haxe code configuration. Array of switchable configurations for the Haxe completion server. Each configuration is an array of command line arguments. Okay, options for code generation. Well, let's see. Haxe dot. So we've got build completion cache, code generation, configurations. Let's just take a look at what we have here. I think it might be under configurations. That's where I'm thinking. Build completion cache. Options for code generation. I'm going to have to look into this. I'm going to have to look into this in my own time just to take a look at that. So I'm not going to do it right now. It was an interesting idea, but we're not going to do it right now. So anyway, let's. So I'm going to just stick with build.html down here so that we know what's going on. I need to switch here so that you know what I'm doing. Just to be sure. So yeah, that was a terrible idea. Having done that, that was a mistake. I need to remember to switch scenes and screens and stuff like that. I'm very sorry about that, but never mind. So what I'm going to do now is actually implement a router. How do you do that? So what I'm going to do is import js.browser. And in here, I'm going to create, firstly, a new static function. I'm going to call it router. So I'm going to get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is say browser.window.add event listener. And in here, I'm going to say hash change. And I'm going to say function. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm just going to put in router here. And then I'm actually going to call the router instantly. So inside of our router, what I'd like to do is I need to get the hash value of our page. So I'm going to say var hash, and I'm going to say browser.location.hash. Now, if we were to go to our side screen, we've got up here hash slash. So this is our typical format for our URLs. So what I need to do, if we go back to our main screen, what I need to do is make sure that if our hash is empty, so if it's empty, or if our hash is equal to just hash slash, then we're going to construe that as the home page. So var URL, so this is the URL that we actually want to retrieve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, so our home page is going to be our news.html. So let's do that, shall we? So pages slash. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say URL plus equals news.html. if our hash is not like that, then what I'd like to do is instead say URL plus equals hash, but we want to remove the hash slash bit here. So I'm going to say substr2. Now, if we were to get page initially, what's going to happen is, because we've got all these forward slashes at the end with books and projects, so we've got books.htm, right? But then we've also got projects.htm, and we've got our about.md. Now this is a special case scenario, so we want to be able to check the difference between HTM and MD as well. So in order to do that, what I need to do is install Markdown, which I haven't actually done in this version of Haxe. So what I'm going to do is just do that. So haxlib install Markdown. That is a library that does in fact exist. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to install it. That's all done. So what I'm going to do is back inside of here, inside of build.hxml, I'm going to say -lib Markdown. So we're going to use another library here, so that we can interpret that Markdown file. So what I'm going to do now is inside of here, so like I said, we've got all these forward slashes here. Well, that's nice in terms of URL to make it look, to make our URLs pretty, let's say. But let's say if we go back to here, for example, even though this might look, let's say, appealing, I mean it's just a URL, but there's a reason why you want to format your URLs in a specific way, because obviously it doesn't look nice to have all these horrible, this stuff and all of these random things going on there. So there's a reason why you want to do stuff like this, because it also helps search engines to pick up your pages on your website when it crawls your website and stuff like that. So in order to get this to work, what I will first need to do is go back to here. So what we want to do is we want to check and see our get page. So I need to think about this now, because this is not something I don't generally do. So I think we're just going to do a specific use case for the about page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's see, I'm going to do a switch case statement, in fact. So what I'm going to do is, instead of our URL, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if we've got here hash and hash here, I'm going to say news.htm like this, or pages/news.htm. So that's what I'm going to do. No, I'm not actually. I'm just going to say news. Otherwise, what I'm going to say is hash.substr2. Then I'm going to switch on the URL. So inside of here, I'm going to say case. If our URL is about, in fact, it will be about / technically speaking, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Markdown. So I'm going to say import Markdown type. Yeah. Isn't there an actual Markdown? Let's just double check this a minute. Let's take a look at Markdown, shall we? So this is the Markdown library that I've just installed. Let's go to the, let's see, repository. Markdown.markdown to HTML. Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, it is literally just called Markdown. Okay, that's interesting. Is there an actual package to that? No, there is not. Interesting. Okay, fair enough. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to get rid of that then. I am just going to say get page. So we want to get the page pages/about.md. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this into a callback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say string void like this. This is a notation for callback. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to say CB, and then I'm going to put request dot response text like that. So I'm going to put that in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a callback here, which is going to be the response that we get, or the result, let's say. And inside of the result, what I'd like to do is say, if we go back to here, we've got our Markdown. So Markdown to HTML, so that's the function that we want to use. So I'm going to say, yeah, so I believe that's going to return us to HTML. So I'm going to say var HTML, then Markdown dot Markdown to HTML, and this is going to be the string, the result, and that's going to return our HTML. And then finally I'm going to do what I did before, which is new JQ hash content dot HTML, and then I'm just going to pass that in there. In any other case, what I'm going to do instead is say get page. So first of all, because we've got our URLs ending in /, if you remember, like here, for example. Let me just double check something. Yeah. I keep forgetting which scene I'm on. Because we've got backslashes here, obviously we're doing this as a specific case scenario because this is a Markdown page here. For any other case, what I'd like to do is convert the ending backslash here into .htm. So what I'm going to do is say var path is equal to the empty string for the time being. So what I'm going to do is say if URL dot index of / is equal to URL dot length, so base -1. So that's basically saying, does the URL end with /, which it most likely will. And if that's the case, what I'm going to say is path is equal to URL dot substr 0 to the length -2, because we want to remove the /, and then I want to add .htm at the end. So I'm going to put that in there, and inside of our callback, I'm going to put down in here let's say this basically. So new JQ hash content, and then result inside of here. Now it might be -2 or it could be -1, so let's just double check that and make sure that does in fact work. So what I'm going to do is build that. It has compiled. And let's go back to our screen here. So what I'm going to do is / like that all. So as you can see, it's got our about page here. If I go to books, interesting. So let's take a look at that and see what is going on with that. Book.html. Home. I forgot to show you. This is why I need to just keep going back to what I originally started doing, which was just take a look at OBS and switch from there, because I am not very good with shortcuts, clearly. But anyway, so because you didn't see what I was doing, let me just tell you what exactly I was looking at. So this is I was looking at hash, and I had just changed this to a / just to make sure that this check would work. Obviously this is a less than ideal router. This is just to get something on the screen and working. So yeah, so I've just compiled that, so I'm compiling it again just to make sure. So let's go back to the side screen, and do not forget to frickin' change the screen again. Okay, so this is our home page. We're not doing anything on the home page for whatever reason. New.html, right? So so we don't want to do -2, we want to do -1. So let's see. Let's go back to our main screen. So I'm going to say -1 here instead of -2. So I got that wrong. So let's compile that again. Then go back. Refresh. So here we are. So we've got our news.html getting parsed into here. Let's just do that a minute. So we go to books. This is what that's doing. Obviously it's not really doing much at the moment. Go to projects. That's what that's doing. Why is it doing that for? Strange. And then we go to about. That's what that's doing. Obviously there's no inner HTML panel going on there, so I will probably need to fix that. And also yeah. Yes, well, I thought quick fix, let's just do this. I believe it's sup, like that. Oop. Yeah, so if we go back to our side screen again, so this is what it looks like. So and as you can see, obviously with other pages everything appears to be centered like this, and obviously our projects as well. But if we were to go to about page, it's not doing it. So this is something I'm going to fix in, I mean, we can do a quick fix now, just to show you. So this is what I would do in this instance. So I would have, say, a wrapper of div class, and in fact I will use single quotes here instead of double quotes, and I'm just going to say inner class, div class inner panel here plus h. In fact, I don't have to do that. I can do this HTML, right, and then div like that. So instead of putting, don't forget to do that. Instead of putting HTML into there directly, I'll do this wrapper like that. Then compile. And then switch back to our side screen, refresh, and there we go. So that is that for the time being. So we're going to actually connect to a database in the next tutorial. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And as mentioned in the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is go into actually putting together a database. We're going to touch on the server side, and we're actually going to get this stuff working. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you again soon.